Albums filled with square, black and white images and asking questions about the long-dead relatives frozen in the frame. My favorite subjects in school were English and social studies, and I peppered my teachers with questions. History revealed the building blocks of the world I now inhabited, explaining how communities, institutions, relationships came to be. Learning history made the world make sense. It provided the key to decode all that I saw around me. Black people, however, were largely absent from the histories I read. The vision of the past I absorbed from school textbooks, television, and the local history museum depicted a world, perhaps a wishful one, where Black people did not really exist. This history rendered Black Americans, Black people on all the earth, inconsequential at best, invisible at worst. We appeared only where unavoidable. Slavery was mentioned briefly in the chapter on this nation's most deadly war, and then Black people disappeared again for a full century until magically reappearing as Martin Luther King Jr. gave a speech about a dream. This quantum leap served to wrap the Black experience up in a few paragraphs and a tidy bow, never really explaining why, 100 years after the abolition of slavery, King had to lead the March on Washington in the first place. We were not actors, but acted upon. We were not contributors, just recipients. White people enslaved us, and white people freed us. Black people could either choose to take advantage of that freedom or to squander it, as our depictions in the media seem to suggest so many of us were doing. The world revealed to me through my education was a white one. And yet, my intimate world, my neighborhood, the friends I rode the bus with for 2 hours each day to and from the schools on the white side of town, the boisterous bevy of aunts, uncles, and cousins who crowded our home for barbecues and card games, was largely Black. At school, I searched desperately to find myself in the American story we were taught, to see my humanity, our humanity, reflected back to me. I snatched Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry from our elementary school library shelf because it was the one book with a Black girl on the cover. In high school, when my advanced placement English teacher assigned us a final project on a famous American literary figure, I wrote about the only Black poet I had been exposed to, Langston Hughes. My public high school in Waterloo, Iowa, offered a one-semester elective called The African American Experience, which I took my sophomore year. Only other Black kids filled the seats each day, and the only Black male teacher I'd ever have taught the course. Rail-thin and mahogany-skinned, with a booming laugh that revealed the wide gap between his front teeth, Mr. Ray Dow deftly navigated our class through the ancient Mali, Songhai, Nubian, and Ghana empires. It was he who taught me that, from here to Timbuktu, referred to an African center of learning. Surveying the cultures and knowledge and civilizations that existed among African peoples long before Europeans decided that millions of human beings could be forced across the ocean in the hulls of ships and then redefined as property. He taught us about Richard Allen founding the first independent Black denomination on this soil, and how hard enslaved people fought for the legal right to do things every other race took for granted, such as reading or marrying or keeping your own children. He taught us about Black resistance and Black writers. He taught us about Martin, but also Marcus and Malcolm and Mamie and Fanny. Sitting in that class each day, I felt as if I had spent my entire life struggling to breathe, and someone had finally provided me with oxygen. I feel a pang of embarrassment now when I recall my surprise that so many books existed about Black people and by Black people, that Black people had so much history that could be learned. I felt at once angry and empowered, and these dueling emotions drove an appetite for learning Black American history that has never left me. I began asking Mr. Dow for books to read beyond the assigned texts, devouring them, and then asking for others. "Dr. Hannah," he exclaimed one day, flashing his trademark toothy grin as he put a book in my hands, Before the Mayflower, by the historian and journalist Lerone Bennett Jr. bring